Blind date disaster? The mechanic walked in. The paralyzed female CEO never expected to smile again. She had been looking forward to this evening all week. Her friends told her this man was charming, successful, and perfect for her. Dressed in her best outfit, with her heart beating fast, she walked into the fancy restaurant with hope in her eyes. At first, she thought everything was going well. He smiled, shook her hand, and they sat down. But the moment she opened her mouth to speak, his expression changed. He leaned back, gave her a long, judgmental look, and then he laughed. Right there, in front of the waiter and the other guests, he mocked her. He made cruel jokes about her appearance, her clothes, and even the way she spoke. People at nearby tables turned their heads. Some smirked, some looked away, and she sat there, frozen, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She tried to hold on to her pride. She forced a smile, hoping he would stop, but he didn't. After a few minutes, he stood up, threw the napkin on the table, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're not worth my time." Then he left, just like that. The whole room seemed to close in on her. Her eyes blurred with tears she was desperate to hide. She quickly grabbed her purse, stood up, and walked out of the restaurant, her heart shattering with every step. Outside, the night air was cold. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying not to cry in the middle of the street. What was supposed to be a night of new beginnings had turned into one of the most humiliating moments of her life. And yet, this was only the beginning of her story. She stood on the sidewalk, clutching her purse, trying to hold back her tears. Cars rushed past, lights flashing, but all she could feel was the heavy ache of humiliation pressing down on her chest. Her phone buzzed. A message from a friend, asking how the date was going. She couldn't even bring herself to answer. Instead, she whispered to herself, "I just need to go home." But as she walked toward her car, her hands shaking, the final blow came. Her old, tired car refused to start. She turned the key once, twice. Nothing. The engine groaned and died, just like her heart. She leaned her forehead against the steering wheel, letting a few tears finally slip out. Why tonight? Why me? That's when a voice broke the silence. Need some help? She lifted her head and saw him, a tall man in worn jeans and a grease-stained shirt, standing near his motorcycle. His hands were rough, his hair a little messy, but his eyes carried a warmth she hadn't seen in a long time. Embarrassed, she quickly wiped her face. "No, it's fine. I'll manage." But he didn't walk away. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "I'm a mechanic. Looks like your car is giving you trouble. At least let me take a look." Something in his voice, steady, kind, without judgment, made her nod, even though her pride wanted her to refuse. He rolled up his sleeves, opened the hood, and got to work. She watched him quietly, the way his strong hands moved with confidence, the way he didn't ask questions or pry into her life. He just focused on helping. After a few minutes, he looked up. "It's not going anywhere tonight, but I can give you a ride home if you trust me enough." For a moment, she hesitated. Getting on a stranger's motorcycle wasn't part of her plan. But then she thought about the cruel laughter in the restaurant, the cold stares of strangers, the silence of her phone, and this man standing here, offering kindness with no strings attached. She nodded. "Okay." And so With her heart still aching, but her spirit just a little lighter, she climbed onto the back of his motorcycle. As the engine roared to life, she held on tight, not knowing that this ride was about to change everything. The motorcycle ride home was quiet. The night air rushed past her face, carrying away some of the pain she had been holding inside. For the first time that evening, she felt like she could breathe again. When they reached her street, he slowed down and stopped in front of her apartment building. She climbed off, brushing her hair back, unsure what to say. "Thank you for this," she murmured, her voice soft. He gave a small shrug, almost shy. "Don't mention it. I'll take a look at your car tomorrow. No need to worry." Her eyes widened. "Oh, no, you don't have to." But he cut her off gently. "I want to. Let me help." The next morning, true to his word, he showed up at her apartment parking lot. His tools in hand, sleeves rolled up, he worked on her car like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stood nearby, watching him, a cup of coffee in her hands. He didn't ask for details about her night. He didn't ask why her eyes looked tired from crying. He just worked, steady and calm, as if fixing her broken car was the most important task on earth. After an hour, he straightened up, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "There, she'll run just fine now." She opened her purse, pulling out her wallet. "Please, let me pay you, at least something." But he shook his head firmly. "No charge. Consider it a favor." She blinked, caught off guard. "A favor? For what?" He smiled, gentle, unassuming. "For letting me prove that not everyone walks away when you need them." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said something like that before. No one had ever made her feel seen without asking for anything in return. And in that quiet parking lot, with a fixed car and a heart that felt a little less broken, something unspoken began between them. Something she couldn't name yet, but something real. After that day, things slowly began to change. It wasn't sudden, like in the movies. It was quiet, like a sunrise, where you don't notice the light until the whole world feels brighter. She started seeing him more often. Sometimes he would stop by her building to check if her car was still running smoothly. Other times, she found herself passing by his small garage just to wave hello. One afternoon, she brought him coffee. He looked surprised, his hands still covered in grease, but the smile that spread across his face was worth everything. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know," she replied, handing him the cup, "but I wanted to." From then on, little routines formed between them. A quick lunch at the corner diner, a shared laugh over a silly joke, long walks where they talked about everything and nothing. She learned that beneath his rough, hard-working exterior, he had a gentle soul, someone who listened, someone who noticed, someone who cared. And for the first time in a long time, she felt safe. She found herself opening up to him about her fears, her dreams, even about the blind date that had broken her spirit. He didn't laugh. He didn't judge. He just looked at her with quiet eyes and said, "Anyone who couldn't see your worth that night is a fool." Those words stayed with her. They healed something inside that had been hurting for years. And somewhere between cups of coffee, shared smiles, and simple acts of kindness, she realized that her heart was no longer broken. It was slowly learning how to beat again, this time for someone who had never asked her to be anything but herself. Just when her heart was beginning to feel steady again, the past found its way back. One evening, as she was leaving work, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Hey, wait up." Her steps froze. She turned slowly, and there he was, the man from the blind date. The man who had humiliated her in front of a room full of strangers. He looked different this time, softer. His usual arrogant grin was replaced with a rehearsed smile, the kind that hides guilt. "I've been meaning to call you. That night, I was stupid. I had a bad day, and I took it out on you. I shouldn't have. Can we start over?" She just stared at him, her chest tightening. 1,000 memories of his cruel laughter came rushing back. For a moment, the old hurt threatened to drag her down again. But then she remembered the mechanic, his steady hands fixing her car, his kind eyes telling her she was worth more than she believed. And suddenly, the man in front of her seemed so small. Still, doubt crept in. Her friends had always praised this man. Her parents had admired his status. And part of her wondered, should I give him another chance? But another part of her, the stronger part, whispered, why return to someone who broke you when someone else is gently teaching you how to heal? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said quietly, "I'll think about it," and walked away, her mind torn between the painful past and the fragile, beautiful present she was building. What she didn't know was that the mechanic had seen them talking from across the street, and in his silence, his heart began to ache with fear that maybe he wasn't enough for her world. In the days that followed, she noticed the change. The mechanic who once smiled easily, who always found reasons to stop by, had grown distant. His calls slowed down, his visits became rare. When she did see him, he spoke less. His eyes, once warm and steady, now carried a shadow. One evening, unable to hold it in any longer, she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" He shook his head quickly. "No, it's not you." "Then what is it?" she pressed, her voice soft but trembling. He hesitated, then finally said, "I saw you talking to him, the man from before. He fits into your world. He has money, status, the kind of life your parents probably want for you. Me? I fix cars in a garage. I don't belong in that world. I don't want to be the mistake that holds you back." Her heart sank. She stepped closer, trying to meet his eyes. "You're not a mistake. Don't you see? You're the only one who's been real with me. The only one who didn't laugh, didn't judge, didn't walk away." But he turned his face, pain flickering across it. Sometimes love isn't enough. And with those words, he pulled away. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. He thought he was protecting her, even as it broke him inside. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, her chest heavy with a fear she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time since that humiliating dinner, she cried again, not because she was unloved, but because the person who loved her most was convinced he wasn't worthy of her.
Weeks passed. She tried to move on with her daily life, but every street, every coffee shop, every quiet moment reminded her of him. The man who had once been everywhere was now nowhere, and the silence was unbearable. Then, one rainy evening, fate intervened. Her car broke down again, this time in the middle of a crowded intersection. Frustrated, drenched, and near tears, she stood beside it, wondering what else life wanted from her. And then she heard it, the familiar sound of a motorcycle pulling up beside her. She turned, and there he was, helmet under his arm, rain dripping from his jacket, his eyes locked onto hers with the same warmth she thought she'd lost forever. "You again," she whispered, half in disbelief, half in relief. He gave a small, crooked smile. "Looks like your car still needs me." Something inside her broke open. All the fear, the longing, the unspoken words, everything rushed to the surface. She wanted to shout at him for leaving, to tell him how much it hurt. But instead, what came out was a trembling, "I missed you." For a moment, he froze. Then his face softened and his voice grew quiet. "I missed you too, more than I should have." Standing there in the rain, surrounded by honking cars and flashing lights, they both realized something. They weren't done, not even close. He fixed her car again that night, but more importantly, he fixed something in her heart. And when he finally walked her home, she knew this wasn't just about kindness anymore. It was about love.
For a little while, things felt perfect again. She and the mechanic spent more time together, sharing meals, late-night walks, laughter that felt easy, and quiet moments that felt safe. She was falling, truly falling, and this time she wasn't afraid of it. But love, as she soon learned, rarely comes without a test. It started when her parents found out. They had always imagined a different future for her, one with polished dinner parties, business partners, and a man who carried the right name and status. When they learned she was seeing a mechanic, their disapproval was immediate and sharp. At dinner one evening, her father's voice was cold. "You're throwing away your future. Do you have any idea what people will say when they see you with someone like him?" Her mother added, "He can't give you the life you deserve. This is just a phase. End it before you embarrass yourself further." Each word cut deeper than the last. She wanted to argue, to shout, to defend the man who had been her anchor when she was drowning. But she sat there silently, her hands trembling beneath the table, her heart torn between the family she loved and the love that finally made her feel alive. That night, alone in her room, she cried. Not because she doubted him, but because she feared the weight of choosing between her parents' approval and her own happiness. She thought about his rough hands, his quiet smile, the way he had stood by her when no one else had. And she asked herself, how could they not see what I see? How could love ever be wrong if it feels this right? But her parents' voices echoed in her mind, and she knew the storm between love and duty was only just beginning.
The pressure from her parents only grew heavier with each passing day. They arranged dinners with suitable men, dropped hints about her future, and reminded her constantly of the life she was meant to have. But every time she sat across from someone else, she thought of him, of the man who had stood in the rain with her, who had fixed her car without asking for a single coin, who had looked at her like she was worth the world when everyone else had torn her down. One evening, her parents confronted her directly. Her father's voice was sharp, final. "It's him or us. Choose wisely." Her heart pounded in her chest. For a long moment she stared at the table, her fingers twisting nervously. But then, slowly, she raised her head, and for the first time, her voice did not tremble. "I have already chosen." Her parents blinked in shock. "I choose him," she continued, tears shining in her eyes. "Because when I was broken, he made me feel whole. When I was humiliated, he gave me back my dignity. And when I thought I was unlovable, he showed me I was worth loving. If that isn't enough for you, then maybe you never really knew me at all." The room went silent. Her mother gasped softly. Her father's face hardened. But she didn't back down. For the first time, she stood tall, not as their daughter trying to please them, but as a woman choosing her own happiness. That night, she walked out of her parents' house with her heart racing, her legs shaking, and her future uncertain. But in her chest burned a quiet fire, the kind that only comes from standing up for love. And when she saw him waiting outside, worry written across his face, she smiled through her tears and whispered, "I chose you." In that moment, every doubt, every fear, every wall between them crumbled.
When she whispered those words, "I chose you," he froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. For so long he had feared he wasn't enough, that she would walk away to a world where he didn't belong. But here she was, standing in front of him, her eyes full of tears, her voice steady with truth. "You chose me?" he asked softly, as if the words themselves were fragile. She nodded, stepping closer. "Yes, I don't want a life filled with money and empty smiles. I want you, the man who showed me kindness when I had nothing left, the man who saw me when no one else did." His throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to say everything he had held back, but instead he pulled her into his arms. For a long time, neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The way she clung to him, the way his arms wrapped protectively around her, spoke louder than anything else. Life ahead wouldn't be easy. Her parents might never forgive her. The world might never understand. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Weeks later, in a small gathering by the sea, with only a handful of friends and people who truly cared, they promised each other forever. No grand stage, no flashing lights, just two souls who had walked through pain and found their way back to love. As the sun dipped into the horizon, she looked up at him with a smile. She whispered, "We may not have everything, but we have what matters." And he kissed her, sealing the promise they had both fought so hard for. Together, hand in hand, they stepped into a future built not on status or approval, but on something far stronger. Love born from kindness, tested by fire, and chosen with courage.